Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Zoe here from Learning Boosters. This week we're going to talk about a little people big oomph, I've called it, which is basically about tantrums. So this session is the first in a series. So this is it from a series of two. And in these next two Wisdom Wednesdays, and you can also find the written blog on our website at www.learningboosters.com. We're going to talk about how to eliminate or lower those power struggles with your child when they're having a tantrum, and how we can raise those strong, happy, resilient kids. So this first one is I've called Little People Big Oomph, because let's face it, when your little person between the age of 0 and 5 is having a tantrum, you know it. Okay, so between the ages of 1 and 3, many parents are finding that their children are actually throwing a lot of tantrums, including myself. So I've had times when my child's been throwing a tantrum and, you get to that stage where you just find it so exhausting. And I remember thinking, oh, not again. What is it this time? What's wrong? So those reactions we need to remember are quite normal. It's not a sign of bad parenting. It's a sign of us trying to find new ways to help our child through this time. So children are supposed to test limits and push your buttons, basically, and it is how they learn and how their brain actually develops. So tantrums are all about releasing those pent-up feelings and emotions. They need to release them in some ways. So how can we make these just moments rather than them full-blown arguments or fights between us and our children, or between your child and another child? So let's first of all delve into why these tantrums are happening and how we can easily deal with them, and also how we can teach our children to self-regulate. Okay, so when kids are having a tantrum, their brain is actually acting on an impulse. This happens so quickly that the thinking part of the brain hasn't engaged yet to help them handle that feeling. So there's little or no thinking or problem-solving mechanisms. It's just pure emotion and pure impulses. So kids between the age of 0 and 3, they just don't have that part of the brain that can help them to regulate, to self-regulate, or even in some ways and sometimes to even understand what they're thinking and feeling. So the thinking and problem solving is processed by the frontal lobe, so the lobe that's in the front of your brain, which it hasn't actually developed yet. So it hasn't developed enough to help them to actually think clearly about what's upset them. So once we understand that, as a parents, we need to really just take a breath and realise that it's not their fault. It's not their fault they're throwing a tantrum in the middle of the supermarket because they're feeling overwhelmed by all the sounds and the people and everything else. They don't understand it. Their brain is actually not developed enough to actually be able to regulate that or to understand it. So it really isn't their fault. But by 5, most kids are starting to understand their feelings and they're able to control them. This doesn't mean that they'll be all right all of the time. It's like us adults, we're not right all of the time. Sometimes, as an adult, you can feel really angry and you just want to vent it. So not all kids are able to control their feelings. So sometimes there can be difficulties because of emotional immaturity or signs of an underlying issue such as ADHD or anxiety, of course. So if you have an anxious parent, you're pretty much going to have an anxious child. So whatever we do as a parent is really important when it comes to teaching our children to be strong and happy and resilient. So us as parents, we need to emulate what it is, the sort of behaviour we want our child to have. So when kids are having that actual tantrum, most tantrums are driven by an anxiety or by a fear or a not understanding a situation, which will trigger those two things. It's part of that fight-flight response. so they can actually not regulate it themselves. So when kids are having a tantrum, their brain is acting on impulse. We need to try and remember that. So remember that this happens so quickly that the thinking part of the brain will switch off. So it isn't engaged, and it isn't there to help them navigate those feelings. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 practical things to consider that's going to help you in these sort of situations, and that will help your child to become more resilient. And eventually, when that part of the brain develops a bit more, they're going to be able to self-regulate. So the first one we need to have a think of as a parent is your child tired? Are they hungry, or are they overstimulated? You'll find with children with autism and even ADHD, sometimes the main thing that sets them off is that they're overstimulated. There's too much going on for them. So we need to help them to reduce these if they are having a tantrum, and the tantrums will become less frequent. So before you take your child to the supermarket, for instance, just make sure that they've had something to nibble on before they go, or in the car as you're driving there and they've had a drink. So those are 2 issues you don't have to worry about when you're in the supermarket. So the second thing is, what is your child feeling? If you know how they're feeling, you'll probably be able to sense when they're going to get those big feelings, when those big feelings are on the way. Because let's face it, you're the parent, you know your child best, and you know how to talk to them about what's going on. So understanding will help your child to manage these difficult feelings. So if this doesn't work, try distracting them with a toy. Or I used to sing a song to my son, which used to, change the distract him from what he was thinking and feeling. And he used to just go, oh, and that was the end of the tantrum. So you can try distracting them with a toy, distracting them with a song. If you're lucky enough to be in the car when the tantrum's happening, put on their favourite song. Excuse me. So that's 2 things. So the third thing is, you know your child best. So you'll know what can trigger that tantrum. And as I used before, I said for the example, for if your child's having a tantrum when you're shopping, they might want something you don't want to buy. We all have, the kids go, can I have this? No. 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 Rather than saying no, because that may trigger a tantrum, get them to have a look at the list that you have. Let's have a look at the list and see if that's actually on our list. And if they are not yet able to read, you can read through and the list with them and just say, oh, no, it doesn't seem to be on their list, so we're not going to get that today. Can you put it back, please? So what you're doing is you're showing the behaviour you would like your child to have. So get involved in helping them and get them involved in helping you. So it might even be better to go shopping after your child's had a nap or they've had a snack. So the 4th thing, talk about the emotions with your child. So when your child is struggling with a strong feeling, encourage your child to name that feeling and what caused it. So we're thinking about 5 onwards, remember? So this is the time when kids have pretty much got an understanding of what's going on and what they're feeling, and they can generally name it. But we're there to help them to name it and help them to understand what caused it. So, for example, did you throw that toy because you were cross? What else could you have done? So what you're getting them to do is you're getting them to think of a solution for themselves. So that's where the resilience comes in, and that's where you start developing that thought process of them being able to navigate their feelings. They might have thrown the toy and then go, oh, I'm feeling angry. Why am I feeling angry? Oh, that's because Susie tried to take the toy off me. So I threw it so she couldn't get it. So that's an understanding. So then as a parent or as a child educator, you can say to them, what happened? What were you feeling, and what would have been a better thing to do, do you think? So you're not giving them the answer. They're having to think about the answer. And because they're having to think about the answer, that part of the brain's going to develop quicker than it ordinarily would if you go, Don't throw that toy. I know you were feeling cross. You know, maybe you come and do this. You're helping them to work out the problem for themselves. So that's in that way, they're learning to self-regulate. So these are just some practical, no-nonsense techniques that will help you out. Let us know how you go and look out for next month's blog and Wisdom Wednesday, because the topic is going to be about tantrums in teenage years. So we all know that when the kids are going through those hormone times, they're going to, you know, be thinking and feeling some big stuff. So next month's is actually going to help with some practical ideas and some ways of helping your teenager to self-regulate. Please go to our website, www.learningboosters.com. I'd love to hear how you go on helping your kids to be resilient and helping your kids to develop that part of the brain that is going to help them to self-regulate their emotions. So I hope that's helped. Let us know how you're going, and I'll see you next month. Bye.